Hello, Marcus Brunzi here from How to Kill an Hour, and today we're looking at the DJI FPV. I put it out there on my social media asking you to ask me what you wanted to know about this new drone from DJI. So I gathered together your questions, simmered them down to the most common ones, and we'll answer them here. Who are DJI? Well, since the mid-2000s, DJI have been working on pushing UAV tech to its limits, and since the breakthrough of the Phantom in 2013, they have definitely been in the conversation when it comes to the best consumer drones out there. Over the years here at How to Kill an Hour, we followed various offerings from their roster, with varied wins and a couple of accidents along the way. Drone footage itself has become a big part of filmmaking, and a special flavour of drone footage has really been taking off in the last 12 months. And that flavour is first-person view flying, or FPV for short. FPV drones are usually characteristically much more nippy and nimble, allowing for the pilot to pull tight turns, twists, and even flips. And this makes manoeuvring through tight spaces that were perhaps not a viable option in the past into something that makes super cool shots. For example, a recent video went viral where someone managed to fly a drone through a whole bowling alley, inside and behind the machinery, and that caught the attention of Guardians of the Galaxy film director and producer James Gunn. And to be fair, the footage was really impressive, and really showed what you could do if you were skilled with an FPV drone. Now, DJI themselves pride themselves on pushing the boundaries with new ideas. In this case though, the FPV is not a new idea at all. It's a refined one. For the first time, they have created a complete FPV drone simply called the DJI FPV, which leads to the next question I was asked the most. How much does it cost? It costs £1,250, which I have to admit is a lot. However, it is good to fly out of the box with minimal assembly required, which is really a much better option for someone like myself, because for me to learn to put together my own FPV from scratch would take a long time, and I'm not sure how flight worthy it would be. Plus, if it breaks, I have to fix it myself. How would I be at patching things like this together? And maybe it'd be fun for you to learn, but I just want to fly. Which leads on to my next question. What is DJI Care Refresh? I want to be clear with this before I get into the review of the drone itself, because I really express this to my friends who want to buy a DJI drone. You should definitely get the DJI Care Refresh package if you can when you get your drone. Why? The Care Refresh is a protection plan that offers accidental damage coverage for your drone. For the DJI FPV, you get a 1-year care plan that can include up to 2 replacements in 1 year. You basically get not 1, but 2 extra lives for your drone if you kill it. For the FPV, Care Refresh costs £150 at the time of making this video, but I think it's well worth it for the peace of mind, especially when you're looking at a drone that can move in such a dynamic way. Question: what comes in the box? DJI sent us the combo kit box, which came with 1 FPV drone, 2 batteries, 2 pairs of propellers, a gimbal protector, some goggles, 4 antennas for the goggles, 1 battery to power the goggles, the DJI FPV remote controller, some spare control sticks, all of the cables to connect everything together, and a headband for the goggles, including some foam padding. We also got the new one-handed motion controller in a separate box, which costs £140 and is optional. At the time of making this, there is no bundle with this new controller included. Question: how'd you learn to fly it? Before you charge up and take to the skies, DJI, and also any sane person, recommends that you download their DJI Virtual Flight app. This has 3 training sessions which will teach you the basics, give you some virtual open world environments to practice in, and also has a time trial mode so you can practice your speedy maneuvers. Plus, you can do all of this training with the controller and goggles, giving you as real an experience as you can get before you get into the real world. There are also masses of how-to guides and tutorials on the DJI YouTube to give you all you need to get started and maintain your drone. Question: how long can it fly for? Once you're all trained up and find a safe place to fly, things get very interesting indeed. Now, the FPV stats say that it can fly for up to 20 minutes at a time. We found in the real world that we got just over 15 minutes flying it in normal mode and more like 10 minutes in full manual. Question: how fast is it? It is rapid. The DJI FPV can go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 2 seconds and has a top speed of 140 kilometers an hour in full manual mode. To jump into full manual mode, you need to have spent some time getting very good at flying, as in very good at flying. Then you also need to make some adjustments to the throttle joystick controller so that the sticks don't bounce back to the middle when moving them around. This will give you a full manual experience of the DJI FPV. The placement of the switch that flips it between manual and normal mode is also very easy to flip back into normal mode if you get in a sticky situation whilst flying FPV. It also makes landing very easy because you can just flip it back into normal mode and land. Question: tell us more about the motion controller. The DJI FPV motion controller is designed to make flying something you can do with just one hand. You have a trigger that you use to accelerate and a gyroscope on the controller which you use to point the drone in the direction you want to fly. I found it quite hard to use this in the simulation, but when I tried it out in real life, I found it super intuitive. I would go as far as saying, if you have never flown a drone before, it might be easier for you to get to grips with this controller than you would with a conventional drone. Question: how good is the footage? The cam on the FPV shoots 4K at 60 frames a second, and if you like your slow-mo to be even slower, you can shoot at 120 frames a second at 1080p quality. You can utilize the whole 150-degree wide-angle lens when you are shooting at 100 or 50 frames a second, but when you're shooting at 4K 60, you're looking at 142 degrees, which for me is wide enough. All of the settings, apart from the physical adjustments I mentioned to the controller, can be done in the menu via the goggles whilst you are wearing them. You can also access manual camera controls too. You can record footage directly onto the micro SD card on the drone itself, or one that's put inside your goggles, so that if the worst happens to your drone, you have a copy of the footage on you. From what we saw, the footage that was captured directly to the drone was better than the one that we captured in our goggles. The footage from the DJI FPV looks lovely in the edit, and we will talk more about that later. I will say now though, with DJI's image stabilization, the footage is already smooth before you actually do anything to it in the edit. Question: tell us about the goggles. The goggles are the second generation from DJI, and they've been designed to give you a clear, true representation of what you have captured, and boy oh boy, they are super clear. Compared to what people flying FPV drones have had to use in the past, this is a lot better. Question: do you get motion sickness using the goggles? I get horrible motion sickness when I'm in cars in real life and also in VR. Because I was only using the FPV for 10 minutes or so at a time, I was fine. I did feel a bit queasy when I was using the software in the virtual environments though. Perhaps it was the fresh air when I was actually flying that made it less of a big deal. Question: what is this black and orange car that keeps popping up in the background of your video? Well, this is the new Aygo from Toyota. It's the JBL edition. Starting at £14,000, the Aygo is a very reasonably priced car. It's small, smart, and has a 1-litre engine which is not that nippy but fuel efficient. It has 4 doors and 4 seats, probably not big enough to fit 4 6'4" Marcus Bronzes in. It would probably fit more like 4 people who were 5'10" in it. I will say though, with the seat pushed all the way back, there may not be room for anyone behind me, but I was sat very high and had plenty of room for comfortable driving. The boot is also not enormous, but this is a small car. From my time with it, I will say that it's a tasty little first vehicle for somebody who wants to go from A to B, or perhaps a new driver. There is one thing about this JBL edition of the Aygo that isn't small though, and that is its sound system. Its Apple CarPlay enabled infotainment system is hooked up with 600 watts of speaker, including our 160mm subwoofer, which occupies the same space normally reserved for the car's spare wheel. And this thumps. It's a big positive for me and made driving a real fun experience, as I love music. In fact, I love good music over drone footage. So let's see what we picked up with the DJI FPV. Question: have you got any gripes? Whilst the hardware is amazing for the DJI FPV, I mean, listen to the way it sounds just when you turn it on. Oh, great. We did have some issues with the software though. We had errors about prop failure and low battery, which after some investigation showed that our display on our heads up was showing 50% battery when the drone actually had much less. We had to emergency land, luckily everything was okay. Perhaps this is an error that DJI can make sure is fixed before you get your hands on yours. The one-handed controller was also a bit glitchy sometimes. Both of these things can be something that DJI improves with software updates over time, but at the moment of our testing, there was a little bit of work that needed to be done to make sure our flying experience was safe and accurate. So there you have it, the DJI FPV, giving you all the best bits of FPV with minimal hassle once DJI sort out their software, especially if you get the Care Refresh package, which I really think you would be silly not to. Is the DJI the future of droning? I think it might just be. You can let us know in the comments if you think that that's the case, and also let us know if you have any other questions and we'll try our best to answer them. You can also check us out on social media at How to Kill an Hour. We also have a wicked podcast wherever you download those. I am Marcus Bronzy on social media, MarcusBronzy. Until next time, stay blessed.